My son. Texted, "We need space. Don't contact us anymore." So I blocked him too, along with his access to the family fortune he'd been living on for years. My name is Richard Hale. I am 67, a retired electrician, a widower, and a grandfather to 2 kids who look at me like I can fix anything. I know my way around wires, roofs, and grief. I still make pancakes the way Helen liked, and I still talk to her when the house is quiet. I'm not perfect. I can be stubborn. But I keep promises. I helped my son Luke more than I admit out loud. Down payments, bridge money, a truck when work went bad. I told myself it was love. Sometimes I wondered if I was buying a place at his table because the house got too quiet after Helen died. I helped anyway. I believed help could be a bridge, not a leash. I am not so sure now. The kettle clicked off. The steam rose and faded. My phone buzzed once on the counter and slid a little on the laminate. The message filled the screen with its clean little teeth. We need space. Don't contact us anymore. I stood there and let the words sit on my eyes until they stopped stinging. I read it once, then again, slower. My hands did not shake, but the air around me felt thinner than it had a minute before. I touched the phone to be sure it was not some old draft he had never sent. It was today. It was now. I set the phone face down. I did not want to write a speech. I did not want to beg. I also did not want to become a man who could not bend. Beneath the message, I heard his voice from last month's dinner. Careful, guarded. The way he said he had a plan for the roof, and how I jumped in with offers and numbers like a foreman who could not stop telling people where to stand. I walked to the front door and looked at the cardboard box I had packed that morning. 2 winter coats, 1 navy, 1 berry red. The kind that holds in warmth without choking the throat. The tags still hung on the sleeves. I had pictured their faces when I picked them out. Ben would push his hands deep in the pockets and grin at the soft lining. Nora would twirl in the hallway like a queen. I had pictured myself laughing in the doorway. I had pictured good things because that is what grandfathers do. We picture good things. I picked up the phone and read the line again. It had the shape of a final decision. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was a test. I could not tell. I knew only this. I would not chase a man who asked not to be chased. I would not turn into a door-to-door salesman for love. I poured the hot water and forgot the tea. The cup sat there cooling. I stood in my own kitchen and listened to the walls. I thought about the first time Luke called me Dad, and it sounded like pride, not obligation. I thought about the year he broke his arm and asked me to sign his cast first. Then I thought about the last time, and I could not place it. I reached for the coats. My palm pressed the fabric and felt the promise I had made to myself when they were born. To show up, to help, to not make my help the price of being let in. Somewhere between all that, a harder thing formed. I did not have words for it yet, but I knew its weight. I put the phone back down. I picked up my keys. The house was so quiet I could hear my own step. I told myself that if a man draws a line, I can draw one too. Just as straight, just as clear. Power shifted to him for a breath. I felt it settle back into me. I drove with the box in the passenger seat and the heater turned high. Their street was a postcard. The maple branches were bare and black against a pale sky. A bicycle lay on a lawn down the block. The wreath on their door had little brass bells in a circle. I had bought it at the church sale because Nora rang it and then giggled behind her hands. I told myself that gifts do not guarantee welcome. They should not have to. Still, I felt hope like a small animal in my chest, nervous and stubborn. I parked by the curb and cut the engine. The quiet after a car stops is always larger than it should be. I carried the box to the porch and balanced it on one hip while I pushed the doorbell. I listened, the small electric hum, then the deeper house sound behind it. Footsteps, a muffled dog bark, The thud of something soft dropped on a couch. I waited. The porch smelled like pine and cold. I pressed the bell again and heard the chime inside, a cheerful sound in a house that did not want me. A shadow crossed the hallway. I saw a hand go to the dog's collar. The hand disappeared. The dog quieted. I waited. Sophie's car sat in the driveway, crusted with salt from last week's snow. The front room light was on. The curtains were almost closed, but not quite. I caught a slice of a sofa arm. The coats were heavier than they looked. I set the box down on a dry part of the mat and stepped back. My phone stayed silent. I called once. It went to voicemail before the first ring finished. That is a choice you have to make, to cut a call like that. I know because I have made it when salesmen called the house after Helen died, and I could not bear anyone's cheer. I tried to give them that grace, but this was not a salesman. This was me. I stood there long enough for my toes to go numb. I thought about holidays we had fumbled through, about things unsaid because we thought time would stretch further than it did. I thought about the last text from Luke that had nothing to do with money or help. It had been a picture of Ben with a tooth in his palm and a grin as big as the state. I had written back with a gold star and a bad joke about the tooth fairy having inflation. He had sent a thumbs up and then nothing for 2 days. A neighbor stepped onto her porch across the street. She looked at me and then away. I did not want this to be a show. I did not want to put my family's ache out where anyone could point. I slid the box tight against the door to keep it safe from the wet. The bells on the wreath knocked together once like a tiny alarm. I spoke not loud. "Luke," I said to the door, "I am not here to fight. I brought coats for the kids." The door did not answer. The house stilled as if it were holding its breath. I set my smile down like something fragile and turned to go. I lifted the box again and carried it back to the truck. On the way back, I felt something pull across my chest. Not rage, not yet. More like the first knot of a rope being tied, slow and sure. I did not know where it would lead. I just knew this was different than any other time I had stood on this porch. I climbed in. I watched their window a moment longer. Then I drove home through a light rain that the forecast had not promised. Risk rose. Back in my kitchen, I did not turn on the radio. I did not want company from voices that did not know me. I pulled the gray binder from the second drawer of my desk. Its edges were worn. The cover was scored with tiny cuts from years in and out of that drawer. I keep everything, not because I am a miser, but because I have learned how memory cheats when you need it to be clear. I set the binder on the table and opened to the first thick page. Tucked inside were check stubs from the year they married. A copy of a cashier's check for their first condo down payment. $25,000. My handwriting along the edge. A start. The housewarming picture was in there too. Luke with hair too long, Sophie with a new ring glow. It made something ache in me to see how bright we all were. I turned to the next section. The bridge money for the second house when Nora was on the way, and they were drowning in timing, not in failure. $50,000. My note about interest I never charged because family and interest do not mix well for me. I flipped to the page where the truck showed up. $12,000. He called me from the side of the road, angry at the engine and embarrassed at the call. I had a check ready the next morning. Receipts for daycare ran down one sheet like a fence. I had taped grocery cards there too because I could not stand for them to say no to a good roast or fruit just because the week went wrong. I smiled at my own old tape that had yellowed at the edges. I am not ashamed of what I did. I am not. But I looked at the spread of years and felt a pressure in my chest that was not pride. I paused with my hands flat on the table and let all of it move through me. Not just the money. The Sunday afternoons fixing a leaky sink while the game hummed in the background. The night I sat with Ben when he had a fever and Luke had a deadline. The time I let myself in and replaced the broken back step before they woke. None of that was in the binder. It is always the paper that survives. These did not feel like debts, even then. They felt like the work fathers do that no one claps for. Nails in a frame. You stare at a house and forget the nails. You only remember them when you step on one. I closed my eyes a second. I told myself to be honest. If Luke said I made him feel managed, maybe I had sometimes. Maybe I showed up like a man who thought he knew the right way to do every job. Maybe I had not learned how to be useful without being loud about it. I turned another page. There was the note from 3 years back. I remembered the night we wrote it. He sat at the same table. His hands were restless. He said a client was late. He said it was a one-time ask. Just to bridge me, he said. We wrote it down because I believe that paper can take the heat out of love. You set a thing on the page and the feelings can stand down. He signed. He barely read. He laughed when I added a line about collateral. It's family, he said, as if that were a spell. I traced my finger under the date, then let it rest on my own name. I am a sentimental man, but I am not blind. The binder did not tell me what to feel. It simply gave me something to hold while I felt it. I left it open on the table. I called Luke. I did not plan a speech. I wanted my voice to be the kind that could carry both love and a line at the same time. The ring went on longer than usual. I pictured him watching it buzz, choosing when to answer. He picked up on the last beat. Let me see the kids, I said. I kept my voice even. I did not say please. I did not say now. I gave him room to meet me. He was quiet a breath. When he spoke, it was measured. They need space from your control, Dad. The words landed clean. I felt them. My control, I repeated. When something breaks, I fix it. It is what I know. If I have made you feel managed, I am sorry. I paused. I am also your father. He let out a sound that was almost a laugh, but not kind. You show up and decide. You stand in my kitchen and price things. You make everything yours because you paid for it. That is how it feels. I looked at the coats leaning against the chair and thought of my own father, who died young and left me to teach myself, clumsy and scared. I do not want to be a man who buys obedience. I do not want to be a man who is shut out for not paying again. I have been fixing broken things for you since you were 8, I said. I did not do it to own you. I did it because love is work, I swallowed. But if my help has turned into a leash, that is on me to cut. Then cut it, he said. Stop making me feel like a project. I felt an old reflex rise, the one that wants to smooth everything with money and apologies. It backed down. I chose another reflex, a steadier one. You have been living on my help for 10 years, I said. That ends now. I hung up and sat with the silence, heavy as a coat on my shoulders. It would have been easy to call back and take it all back. To say, fine, I am sorry. Take the truck money. Take the bridge. Let us never speak about responsibility again. Easy is a trap when it saves you from a pain you need to feel. I won't be a pushover again. If it continues, I will make him pay any price to respect me. Soon there is going to be only justice. But before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I stood up. I opened my laptop, though screens make me itchy. If I was going to make a clean move, I needed to see what the year had looked like without the blur of habit. The statements were there. They always are. I printed them because I need paper to think. I clipped the sheets together by month and set them in a neat stack. The numbers were simple. Gas on the company card that matched weekends away. A watch paid in 3 pieces, each one more than I spend on groceries in a week. Dinners that smiled at me from the screen with names of places where the napkins are soft. The dates sat beside the charges like little witnesses. I did not try to argue with them. I let them speak. I flipped to the envelope with the note we signed at my table 3 years ago. It had that soft, tired paper feel from being handled and put away and handled again. I slid the document out and read. The lines were short. The promise was plain. He had written his name with a dash through the K, the way he does when he is in a rush. The terms were friendly. The intent was steady. Collateral listed. I gathered the printed statements in both hands. I do not enjoy playing guard. I do not like watching doorways. But that is where I stood, at a doorway between who I had been and who I had to be now. I walked the pages to the dining table and spread them in order. I kept my breathing slow so I would not make this into a chase. I am too old to chase. The trust portal is a place I avoid unless I must. It reminds me that the money I saved and the pension I built are now math on a screen. Still, I logged in. The access log was a column of little times and dates. Friday mornings at 6:12. It did not look like theft. It looked like habit. The kind of habit you grow when the thing you are using is never going to say no. I printed the log and stacked it under the statements. I did not highlight or circle. I did not scribble angry arrows the way I did in my 20s when a contractor shorted me. I made a folder from the manila ones in the side drawer. No labels. I wrote Luke in a thick black pen so I would not pretend it was something else. I sat with the folder for a long time. The house sounds came back. The quiet hum of the fridge, the dull tick of the old clock. My chest hurt like I had been lifting more than I should. I put my palm on the folder and felt that small square weight press back. I did not love any of this. I loved my grandson's laugh. I loved my granddaughter's serious face when she reads. I loved the way Helen's sweater still smells like laundry soap if I open the cedar chest too long. I loved my son. But love could not be a key to every lock in my life. Concrete leverage sat under my hand. I made coffee because I needed the ritual. The sound filled the kitchen like a small engine that has not failed you yet. I did not put sugar in. I wanted to stay sharp. I looked at the coats in the closet and imagined Luke picking them up off the porch like a thief. I imagined him throwing them in the back of the closet, tags still on in July. It made me angry, and then it made me sad. I am not good at this kind of anger. It eats more than it fuels. I took the mug to the back step and breathed the air that smelled like cold dirt. I thought about the summers I taught Luke to strip a wire clean and twist it just so. He was patient then. He liked how a clean join looked like a promise you could trust. Somewhere along the way, we stopped looking at the same job and seeing the same thing. I went back in and called Julie, my lawyer friend. She has known me long enough to hear what I am not saying. I told her I wanted to set a boundary without breaking my family in two. She did not lecture me about statutes. She said, "What do you want your life to feel like in a month?" I said, "Like I am a grandfather, not a faucet." She said, "Then we will make that true in simple steps." I called Mark at the bank. He does not use 10 words when 5 will do. I told him I needed to stop the bleeding and secure the kid's future. He said, "Come in. Bring only what you need. We will keep it clean." His voice steadied me more than the coffee did. I wrote both appointments on a sticky note and pressed it on the fridge beside a faded photo of Helen on a beach with her hair up and a grin that still shames me into gentleness. I washed my cup. I put it away. I took my phone and turned it face down again. The urge to text Luke an apology and another offer pulsed and then sank. I'm old enough to stand still with the urge and not indulge it. I waited. I let the waiting be my strength. I booked 9 o'clock Monday. I wore the blue sweater Helen always said made me kinder. It felt like armor, only because I knew why I had chosen it. The bank lobby was bright and cold the way public places are in winter. Mark shook my hand and did not ask how I slept. I liked him for that. The folder rode in my coat pocket like a square stone. I took it out and set it on the desk when we sat. I told him what I was doing, as if I had already done it, and we were just catching up. I said I wanted to stop Luke's access to funds I managed. I said I wanted to close one card I had opened for his business after a storm took his roof last year. I said I wanted to lock down what belongs to the grandchildren. I did not make a speech about betrayal. I did not list grievances like trophies. I gave him the few facts that mattered. We moved through the steps. They were not dramatic. Mark tapped his keyboard and turned his screen so I could see simple confirmations. Access removed. Card closed. The world did not end. I did not die. He asked, "Do you want to send a notice?" "No," I said. "He will feel it. That is notice enough." Then I did something I had planned the second my anger cooled enough to see straight. I walked 2 blocks to the high school. The principal met me in a small office that smelled like pencil shavings and coffee. I told him I wanted to set up 2 scholarships in Helen's name for trades. I told him I wanted them steady and simple. I told him I did not need my name on a plaque. I just needed a kid to have a start without begging. We filled out what he needed. He kept the language human. It felt like breathing after holding my breath too long. I called Mark again from the parking lot and moved the funds for my grandchildren's college accounts so they could grow untouched by anyone's early morning habit. I wrote down the confirmation numbers only because my hands need to write when my heart is doing something new. I stood on the sidewalk in the winter sun and pulled out my phone. I opened the thread with Luke. I scrolled back through years of small asks and quick answers, pictures of scraped knees and new shirts, jokes that got thumbs ups, and the rare little "I love you" that came like a bird and then flew off. I dragged my finger to the top right and blocked the number. It was not a performance. It was a boundary. I did not write him a speech about fathers and sons. I did not ask him to understand today. Understanding is slow. It is not a text you get back 5 minutes later. I put the phone away. My hands were steady. My legs felt like they had been standing a long time, and in a way they had. I walked home with the blue sweater warm against my ribs. I did not look for a sign that I had done the right thing. I had done the thing I could live with tomorrow. Power flipped. I heard him before I saw him. Tires hit the curb hard. The engine idled too loud, then cut. The gate clicked and rattled. I stepped onto the porch and kept the door half closed behind me. I had on the same blue sweater from the bank. The air was sharp enough to bite, but I was steady. Luke came up the walk red-faced and fast. He stopped at the bottom step like the wood itself warned him. He looked straight at me, then at the house, as if weighing which one to push. "You can't do this," he said. His voice had the edge he used with contractors who missed deadlines. "It's my inheritance." "It was my help," I said. "Inheritance is not wages you expect on Friday. You change passwords. You close cards. He shook his head like he was clearing water from his ears. "You made me look like a child in front of my employees." I thought of the fuel charges on Saturdays, the club fee, the watch. I thought of little Ben drawing a snowman and Nora's stars. "I am done funding a life that calls me the problem," I said. I kept my hands at my sides. "If you want to talk about the kids, I will always talk about them. If you want to talk about respect, we can try that too, but I am not your bank." "You're punishing me because I asked for space," he said. He took one step up. "You always do this. You make it about money so you can win." He was wrong, and he was also a little right. I had used money to smooth sharp edges for years. It had been a bridge until he treated it like a road that never ends. "I am setting the boundary I should have set sooner," I said. "You will be fine if you decide to be fine." He laughed without humor. "You just killed my cash flow." "You killed it when you made my help a habit," I said. "I stopped turning a blind eye to it." He looked at the house again, like he wanted to throw something through a window, and then realized it would be his mother's glass he was breaking. He breathed hard through his nose. "You're going to be alone, you know that?" "I already am," I said. "Alone is not the worst thing. Lying to myself is worse." His eyes moved past me and paused. I knew he was thinking about the coats in the closet. He looked like he might ask. He did not. "You'll hear from me," he said, and the way he said it made the words into a threat and a promise both. I will hear from you when you are ready to speak like a man, I said. Not before. He turned fast and took the steps in 2 long strides. He almost tripped at the gate, then caught himself and slammed it so hard the metal rang. He started the engine and revved it like the noise could undo anything. He peeled away. I watched the taillights shrink until they were 2 dull dots, like eyes narrowing at a distance and then closing. The phone rang at 8 the next morning from a number I knew. Mark asked me to come in. His voice was calm. "It's better if we sit together," he said. I put on my coat and the blue sweater again and drove into town. The lobby felt colder than it had on Monday. I thought of how many times I had walked into a room like this to make someone else's day easier. Today was about truth, not ease. We sat in a small office with glass walls. A young teller I did not know brought in a manila folder and set it on the table. She took a seat in the corner, quiet and alert. Mark opened the folder. He did not slide it toward me as if it were a weapon. He laid the papers out with care. "You asked to keep this simple," he said. "So we will. Your son showed up yesterday. He was upset. We covered what we had to cover with him. Now I want you to see what's in order." He tapped the top page. It was the note from 3 years back. My copy. His signature. My kitchen table in the faint coffee ring on the corner. It steadied me to see it. I remembered that night too well to pretend this paper was a trick. "He says he doesn't remember any of this," Mark said, not unkind. "He remembers," I said. "But this is why I write things down. So we do not have to fight about memory. We did not talk about interest or clauses. We did not carve fine lines." Mark read one sentence out loud. It was the sentence we had written in plain words about what happens if a promise is not kept. The note was serviced through the bank, which made the rest clean. The room felt quiet in a way that had nothing to do with carpets. I thought about how much damage men could avoid if they would sit with simple sentences and not decorate them with excuses. "Is the truck listed?" I asked. I already knew. I needed to hear it said, with witnesses. "Yes," he said. "It is." The teller looked at me and then back at the table. She was there to witness, not to judge. That mattered to me. I do not like to be believed because someone loves me. I like to be believed because a thing is true. Mark put the pages back in order. "You are within your rights. You have been patient. You are not the villain in this story. I let that sit." I did not smile. I did not agree. Villain and hero were words for people who wanted it simple in the wrong way. I just needed my family to stop pretending the sky was not blue when it was blue. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to a man who had slept, even though I had not. There would be no pretending now. Dusk came gray and early. I was washing a plate when headlights slid across my kitchen wall and stopped. I dried my hands and left the water running because I wanted noise to meet whatever came in. A knock shook the door hard, then again, then a third time as if force could fill the space where agreement should be. I opened the door and stepped out, pulling it just to behind me so warm air did not flood the cold. Luke stood there, hair a mess, jaw clenched. The porch light made him look both older and young at once. He tried to talk quiet and failed. "You're ruining my life." "I am ending a habit," I said. "I am not ashamed of that." "You took the card. You called the—" He cut himself off as if saying the word would give it more power. "You have been waiting to do this. Admit it." "No," I said. "I have been waiting for you to stop making me into a faucet." "You did not." I kept my hands in my coat pockets so he could not read them. I did not want him to see them shake. He leaned in close. His breath was hot in the cold air. "I have a payroll due." "I have suppliers." You lit a match and walked away. I thought of all the nights I had looked at a bill with a short due date and swallowed panic and fixed it without telling anyone. I thought of the extra overtime, the extra jobs, the ladder on my shoulder at dawn because the truck payment was a brick on my chest. "You lit it," I said. "You forget where the wick starts." He made a sound, low and ugly. "This is spite," he said. "This is consequence," I said. "You owe me $18,400. That is the promise you signed. The truck is listed as collateral. The cards are closed. I am still your father. Be angry, but do not pretend this is news. That truck is my work," he said. His voice cracked now, small and human around the edges. I felt it. I also did not move. "You will work another way until you pay what you promised," I said. "Or you will borrow from someone who will not love you while they do it." He stared at me. His eyes were bright, the way a boy's eyes are when he falls and tries not to cry. It made my throat tight. He looked past me into the warm square of my kitchen, and I felt the old pull to step aside, to let him in, to load a plate, to fill a bag with food, to pull cash from a drawer and call it mercy. I held the door tight. "Luke," I said, "this is not me leaving you. This is me asking you to stand." He sucked in a breath like he might say something new. He did not. He took a step back. "You always make me the bad guy," he said. "No," I said, and my voice was soft and firm at once. "I am asking you to be a man I can respect. Change is your move." It started in the group chat 10 minutes after he drove away. The family thread we used for birthdays and bad jokes and once, a list of casseroles when Helen died. Luke wrote that I had cut him off, that I was freezing my own grandchildren to make a point. I watched the little dots pulse as cousins and aunts and the one uncle who writes too much all hovered at the edge of a reply. Old hurts like to use moments like this to air themselves out. I had no taste for that show. I scrolled my camera roll. I did not choose 100 images. I chose 2. The first page of the gray binder, the one with the down payment check copy and my small note that said, "A start." The signed promise from 3 years ago. My table in the corner of the frame. My old pen. No arrows. No circles. No captions in fire. I attached them. I wrote one word under the photos. Facts. I sat back in my chair and watched nothing happen. The thread went from hot to still in 10 seconds. People like to fight about feelings. They do not like to fight with paper and dates. My sister sent a single heart and then deleted it before it landed. My nephew put a thumbs up and left it. Sophie did not say a word. She watched. I could feel it through the screen. Sometimes silence is a person figuring out which truth to pick up and which to set down. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have added a paragraph about love. I could have explained that my boundary was not a wall around the children. I could have apologized and taken it all back to make dinner peaceful at someone else's table this weekend. I took my hands off the phone and set it face down. I have learned late in life that the quiet after the truth is not my job to fill. My doorbell rang while the phone lay there like a rock. I stood and left it. At the door, a neighbor held my package. We did not talk long. She looked at my face and then at the house and gave me a nod that I read, as we all have something, "You take care." When I closed the door, the phone was still dark. I made myself a sandwich and ate it standing at the counter like a man who lives alone and knows exactly where the knives go. Later, I opened the thread and scrolled once more. An aunt had posted a picture of Ben with the snowman he built last week, his hat crooked, his grin honest. No words. It said enough. We were all choosing our small sides without making it a war. I did not add a thing. I do not need to win the chat to win my life. I plugged the phone into the wall and felt the house settle. In the hum of my fridge and the tick of the old clock, I found the peace I had wanted last year and the year before when I threw money at storms and called it calm. Let the truth sit in the middle of the room, simple and heavy. Let the quiet work. The tow truck showed up 2 mornings later. I drove across town and stood on the sidewalk across from their house. The driver gave me a small nod. He didn't need my signature to do his job. He was polite. He smelled like oil and cold. I kept my hands in my coat pockets and watched him back into their driveway. Luke's company truck sat in the gravel. He had keys. They never raised their voices. He hooked the truck clean. One tire chirped as it rolled a foot and settled, like a dog shifting in its sleep. The driver tightened the chain and checked it twice. He glanced at me as if to ask if I was going to change my mind right here, on the edge of the job. I shook my head. He nodded and did the last step with care. He did not look pleased. He looked like a man who did work and tried to sleep at night. The front door opened at Luke's. I saw him in his socks in the cold. He stood on the porch with his hands out like he could feel the truck if he reached far enough. He said something I could not hear. The driver said something back, short and respectful and final. Sophie pulled on a sweater and came to the threshold and then stepped inside again. The kids did not show. I was glad for that. My stomach felt like I had held a plank too long. My chest hurt the way it does when you carry a box that is heavier than it looks and you pretend it is fine. I kept my face still. This was not the part of the story I would tell anyone. This was the part I would carry. But I did not look away. I had avoided this for years, thinking softness would save us. Softness has its place. Today did not belong to it. The driver eased the truck forward. The back tires lifted onto the bed with a slow, controlled groan. The sound went through the cold air and into my bones. I set my coffee on the rail and pressed my hand to the post. I did not cry. I did not speak. I let the truth be ugly and useful. Luke shouted a word I will not write. He clapped his hands once on his thighs like a coach who has just watched a stupid error and has no timeout left. The driver clicked his pen and got back in his cab. He checked his mirror the way you do when the road behind you might get rowdy. It did not. The truck rolled away. The house across town closed its door. Inside my kitchen, the clock ticked. The coffee had turned lukewarm. I drank it anyway. I stood a long time at the sink without washing the cup. I thought about the years I spent making work look easy, the way men of my generation used to do. I wondered if that ease had taught him the wrong lesson. I wondered how to teach a different one now without turning my back on my own blood. My phone buzzed and then stopped. I did not pick it up. Not yet. I watched the empty street and the little steam that rose from the top of my cup and disappeared. The legal part had done what it was designed to do. The real part was whether any of us would tell the truth about it when we looked in the mirror. The silence after was the story. I needed air. I drove to the high school with the old folder under my arm and a framed photo of Helen in my other hand. Her smile in that picture had pulled us through worse weeks than this. The office smelled like paper and pencil shavings again. The principal shook my hand and led me down a hallway to the shop room. Sawdust lay in a soft layer on everything. A boy bent over a vise and sanded a small box with a focus I recognized in my own hands from 40 years ago. "I wanted to bring this," I said, handing the principal the frame. "You can put it up or not. No pressure." He took it with both hands and looked at Helen's face like he made a habit of making space for people's love. He nodded toward the kids. "We start the applications next month," he said. "2 seniors who want to work with their hands. We will keep it fair. We will keep it quiet if you want keep it fair," I said. "Quiet is good, too." He asked about Helen. I told him she had laughed with her whole body and could fix a stuck drawer with a butter knife. I told him she would like this room. He pointed out a girl using a plane on a long plank. "She wants to be a carpenter," he said. "She does not have a safety net. This will matter." I stood there and let that wash through me. I had spent a week feeling the vacuum of a thing being taken away from someone I love. Here was the opposite. A thing placed where it could hold weight. It did not erase the other. It made it sit in a different light. He asked if I wanted to say anything when the scholarship letters went out. No speeches, I said. Just tell them a man named Richard loved a woman named Helen, and he believed in work. On the way out, I stopped in the office and signed a single thank you card the secretary had set on the counter for when the first kid is picked. My hand shook a little, not from age, but from relief. I stuck the card back in the envelope and sealed it with the heel of my hand the way Helen used to. On the sidewalk, the cold did not feel so sharp. I called my bank and moved a little more into Ben and Nora's accounts. I did not wait to be asked. I did not wait to be thanked. At home, I printed the email from the principal with the line "all set" in it and set it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. I did not frame it. I just wanted to see it for a while when I reached for milk. I put Helen's empty frame on the mantel because the copy now hung in a place that smelled like sawdust and work. Purpose beat punishment. The call came from a new number at 9 that night. I picked up because not answering is a form of war, and I am not at war with my son. He did not say hello. He started with anger and moved to hurt so fast it made my throat tight. "You have no idea what you've done," he said. "I know what I have done," I said. "I stopped pretending help is love when it is just ease." "You will regret this," he said. It sounded like a wish, not a prophecy. "I already regret what I allowed," I said. "I regret teaching you to lean on me when you needed to lean on yourself." He was quiet long enough that I could hear his breathing. Then he spoke low. "We were counting on you for the next few months." "We made plans. You should have told me." "I did tell you," I said. "I told you for years in small ways. I told you with boundaries I never kept. I told you when I looked tired and you kept talking." I let out a breath. "You are not a boy. You have your own house and your own children." He tried a different angle. "You blocked me." "I blocked a thread that turned me into a target," I said. "I did not block you from being my son." "That is a thing I cannot do." He laughed once, rough. "You and your lines. You draw them, and then you pretend they are the law." "They are my law," I said, calm. "I have one life. I am the one who has to live it." He did not like that. He tried to get me to argue with details. He tried to make me admit I enjoyed the control. I said little. I thought a lot. I thought about the time he was 10 and lied about breaking a window because he was more afraid of shame than of the truth. I thought about how long shame can run a man's life if he feeds it. "Luke," I said, when it was clear the call was a circle, "this is not a door slamming. This is a door that will be open when you are ready to stand." He was quiet again. "What if I never call?" he said. "Then I will be sad," I said. "And I will still be your father." He made a sound like he was going to cry, and then did not. "Goodbye," he said. "Good night," I said. "When you are ready to stand, you know where my door is." I did the small things that hold a day together. I stacked the folder in the safe behind old family photos and the birth certificates. I kept the key in the dish where it has lived for 20 years. I wrote 2 checks, one for the scholarships, one small one for the elementary school book fund because Nora loves the library cart. I tucked them in stamped envelopes and set them by the door for the morning mail. I took the coats from the closet and put them on my porch bench in plain sight with a note that said, "For Ben and Nora." No instructions, no guilt, just a thing that fits on small shoulders in a cold month. If someone took them at night, a neighbor who needed them worse, that would be its own kind of answer. If Luke came and took them at dawn, that would be another. I washed my coffee mug and set it on the rack. I turned off the kitchen light and let the dark be gentle. The house made its old night noises. I walked to the front window and looked out at the street. No cars came by. No engines idled. No one rattled the gate. I had been afraid that strength would make my rooms feel smaller. They did not. They felt like mine. I sat in my chair with a book I did not open. I thought about the work I would take on in the spring. The neighbor's deck has been rotting near the stairs. The church sign needs a new post. I thought about teaching a kid in the shop class how to twist a wire clean and sure. I thought about showing up at a game and clapping for Ben, even if I am sitting by myself at the edge of the bleachers. I was not happy. Happy is light and jumpy and goes when it likes. What I had was better. It was steady. It was the feeling you get when a level bubble settles between the lines. The coats waited on the porch. The notes waited by the door. The folder slept in the safe. I breathed like a man who had been underwater and finally stood up. Agency was back where it belonged. Where does help end and harm begin when it is your own son asking? How do you teach a grown child to stand without turning your back on him? Share your thoughts in the comments.
My grandpa's worst really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.